Welcome to the weekend edition of the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed. I'm Michael Thompson, and hello, Sean Aylmer.
Hello, Michael.
Sean, on weekdays, it's all about the Fast 5, the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. On the weekend, we still keep it to 5 minutes, of course, but we're going to pick out the biggest story of the week, the most remarkable business story, a sleeper story, one that's flying under the radar a little bit, and our favourite business kind of related, adjacent story, let's call it. Let's get into it. What was the biggest business story this week?
Well, plenty going on this week, but I think what happened in markets is probably the biggest story of the week for me. Wall Street hit a new closing high, while locally the ASX 200, it surged, then it tumbled, then it jumped again. It's all about what's going to happen to interest rates in the US and here. To the data in the US, May inflation figures were released. Clearly, there is an easing of price pressures in the US. Equity markets rallied. Wall Street hit a new high. Then the Fed said it's not going to cut rates. Well, it will cut rates, but probably only once this year, not 3 times as they thought. As a result, equities fell. Inflation is unambiguously falling in the US. Not quite as unambiguous here, but it looks like it's falling here. The big unknown is by how much and when rates will fall. It's been hitting the local market. The big miners, BHP, Fortescue Metals and Rio Tinto, were sold off this week. The banks continued their incredible run. The tech stocks are doing even better. Then there's a bunch of household names, Woolies, Telstra, that have just had shockers over the past year. Very hard to be an investor at the moment, Michael.
Yeah, indeed. The other big story this week, Sean, was all about jobs. The unemployment rate fell to 4% in May after a near 40,000 jump in jobs last month. The labour market's in great shape, especially considering the weakness of the economy over the last couple of quarters. Certainly going to all be feeding into the discussion when the Reserve Bank Board meets next week, and considering how strong the labour market is, it makes it less likely that we're going to be seeing rate cuts anytime soon.
I think that's right. What about your most remarkable story, Michael?
Oh, Sean, it's all about the tech giants in the US, particularly Microsoft, Apple, and NVIDIA. It was Apple's week, of course. They had their big announcement about how they were going to incorporate artificial intelligence or Apple Intelligence into its devices, a new version of Siri. There'll be kind of lots of image editing and summarizing of documents, all that kind of thing. A big tie-up with OpenAI's ChatGPT. This was a really, really big announcement, one of the most significant by Apple in years. Investors loved it. The share price shot up 7% in the 24 hours after, another 5% I think it was the next day, and suddenly Apple went from the third biggest company on Wall Street. It then passed NVIDIA and then passed Microsoft to become the biggest company once again on Wall Street. Big, big, big week for the tech giants.
Was I just want to quickly mention how remarkable it is how many companies are leaving the ASX. By my count, 32 so far this year, a couple more to go. This week we had Adbri agree to be sold to an Irish group. Shareholders in CSR agreed to be sold to a French outfit. Suddenly this year, we've just lost all these companies. Azure Minerals, Link Administration, AVZ Minerals, Boart Longyear, Whisper, Costa, Sezzle, Allcom. Now we're going to lose Adbri and CSR. We're not having anything fill the bucket. Only 45 IPOs last year. One that is of significance this year is Guzman y Gomez, and that's only $2.2 billion. Where is all that super money going to go? Real problem for investors, Michael.
Yeah, it certainly is. Sleeper story, Sean, one that's not getting the attention that it probably deserves. What did you find for us?
I thought the Mining and Energy Union filing same job, same pay applications against BHP's labour hire firms was a really important story that we didn't hear enough about. It's the first big test case of the Albanese government's new laws. The applications seek to lift the pay of 1,700 workers by between $10,000 and $40,000 a year. BHP has said these new laws ultimately will cost shareholders about 30 cents a year in dividends. The workers in this case are employed across 3 open-cut mines. It's complex. How do you compare skills and rosters and pay and bonuses across mines, or even within a mine, but across mines? However, this one is the big test case, important because BHP is the biggest user of outsourced labour in the coal sector. The laws haven't been tested yet. Other applications by unions so far have triggered a positive response from employers. They've just simply agreed to change the pay rates. It's BHP. If it loses this fight, not many miners will take on the unions. If it wins, or wins part of the fight, Well, the union's made its job much, much tougher.
Yeah, that is a good sleeper story. Can I suggest a favourite story for us, Sean?
Please do.
All right, well, I like to finish on a little bit of good news. And this is really good news for an industry that's copped an absolute hammering, the local wine industry. Trade Minister Don Farrell this week said that local winemakers have sold $86 million of stock to Chinese consumers since April. That was when Beijing dropped its punitive tariffs on Aussie exports. Love this for a couple of reasons, Sean. One, of course, Aussie wine did just get absolutely obliterated by those tariffs. So who doesn't love seeing our companies getting back into China and selling their wine again? Because before the tariffs, China was our single biggest export market for wine. The other reason, though, that I love it is that when these changes were introduced a few years ago, the wine industry was forced to find new export markets. They increased the amount of wine that was being sold to places like the UK and Singapore and India and Thailand, a bunch of other countries. They diversified, arguably became more resilient, and now that China is open again, suddenly you've got potentially a stronger industry because of it. Really, though, $86 million worth of wine being sold to China in the last 8 or 9 weeks, I think that's good news. It's my favourite story of the week.
I'm with you, Michael.
All right, there we go. 5 minutes and pretty much everything you need to know in the world of business. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
We'll be back on Monday morning with the top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Don't forget to hit follow and join us online on Instagram, TikTok, LinkedIn, Facebook and X. I'm Michael Thompson, and this is the Fast 5 Business News by Fear and Greed.